Libyan rebel forces have reportedly pushed into the city of Yafran, southwest of Tripoli, on Monday. It's a town formerly controlled by troops loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. Meanwhile, Russia is sending a special envoy to Benghazi to discuss brokering a truce between rebel leaders and Gaddafi. NATO warplanes pounded targets in and around Tripoli on Sunday, hitting a military and checkpoints near Brega. British Foreign Secretary William Hague says the campaign against pro-Gaddafi forces is intensifying. Hague also defended the use of British and French attack helicopters, which were employed for the first time over the weekend. Now, for more perspective on the fighting that is engulfing Libya, we are pleased to be joined by Professor Sulayman Nyang of the African Studies Department at Howard University here in Washington. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Nyang.
Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Thank you. Now, this is the fourth month that this fighting has been going on in Libya. Mr. Gaddafi is showing no signs at all of relenting. What do you think is sustaining him right now?
Well, I think Gaddafi is benefiting from the lack of organization and effectiveness on the part of his opposition, because those people who are based in Benghazi are still trying to organize themselves in a united front against him. And they are banking heavily on ally supporters from the UN, such as England and France. And of course, they also feel a loss because of active US investment as it was at the beginning. So I think that's the real problem facing. Gaddafi is surviving. I see a parallel between him and Saddam Hussein, that when Saddam Hussein survived the blows of the first Gulf War, he was able to survive even though a no-fly zone was imposed on him. So Gaddafi is really on the ring, but he is still limping back and forth. And of course, the Allied forces against him are hoping that he is going to get that fatal blow.
Now, talking about the opposition forces, this transitional national council that has now been formed to kind of steer the country into democracy when Mr. Gaddafi is gone and in this interim, there are 31 members of this council. We only know about 13. The others want to have their identities kept secret because of security concerns. Is that a concern?
Well, I think for many of the outsiders who are not familiar with the intricacies of Libyan society and the political geography and the political arithmetic Gaddafi is dealing with, those on the opposition side don't want to give any revelation that could be used against them. So that is one of the reasons why they are keeping some of their cards hidden before they put all their cards. Now, what you have to recognize is the fact that the opposition is trying very hard to make itself a national group. And that's one of the reasons why they cannot declare themselves a government. And that was made very clear by one of their leaders who came here recently in Washington, D.C., when he spoke at the Brookings Institution and revealed himself as a leader of the opposition. So this is the problem. It's a very seesaw kind of politics. That Gaddafi is up because he still controls the state and he has all the weapons of the state. But he is going down because there is resentment on the part of the Libyan people, and there is a strong force from outside supporting the opposition.
Turning to the African Union, they've obviously issued out this statement that they want these bombings to stop. The African Union seems to have no say, really, in what happens in Libya at this point. How do you explain what is...
Well, the African Union is losing out at the most important level, political psychology of African solidarity and unity. Gaddafi has spent a lot of money pushing the African Union to come closer together. He has his own problem with the Arabs, his own problem with the West, but at least in retrospect, after the final nail of his political coffin are put in place, people who will look back at Gaddafi will say that Gaddafi in his last days tried to open a bridge between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. But now the Africans are not in any position to give any support to him because most Africans are not very much impressed by his autocracy. And that is the no word all over the world now.
But they benefited a lot from his...
That's the irony of the Gaddafi phenomena. When the story of Gaddafi is told, you're going to have a tale of two ironies. Gaddafi, the enemy of the West and seen as a terrorist during the Cold War, and Gaddafi, who somehow went through a major metamorphosis by being the man with cash.
To sustain a lot of these African governments and movements.
Yeah, so that's the problem with Gaddafi.
It's a long story. Professor Nyang, thank you so much for joining us today and for all the insights that you've shared with us.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Sulayman Nyang of the African Studies Department at Harvard University here in Washington.